we are going to have a very exciting panel discussion on how to reimagine incident management transformation and the evolving role of operations team in this new era of everything agents, right? And we're not going to explore just how organizations are modernizing operations, driving innovation and reducing risk, but most importantly, how agentic AI is going to affect and influence SREs and how our role may evolve and the broader implications of that. So with that, I would love to welcome Mikhail and Daniel to stage with me. Thank you. All right, so welcome. Let's get cozy. We have about 30 minutes. These are comfortable chairs.
Yeah, these are nice.
Yeah. So I told you the chairs were good. I tested them yesterday. But welcome, everyone. Welcome, Daniel and Mikhail. Maybe let's start by introducing yourself. So Mikhail, why don't you start a little bit about what you do, what your roles and responsibilities are, and who you're with?
For sure. I'm a general manager at Cloudaware. We're a SaaS manufacturer. And we work very closely with PagerDuty because our specialty is cloud management. We manufacture CMDB software for cloud management solutions. And so here today to share our experiences of how we work together. Basically, everything you're going to hear from me here today is more about us, Cloudaware, working with PagerDuty, deploying cloud management solutions for some of the world's largest cloud consumers. And I think those are some interesting experiences that I'll be sharing with you.
Awesome. And let's welcome Daniel, who's with the Golden State Warriors. Go Dubs! All right. Huge Dubs fan. So excited you're here. Would love to share a little bit about your role. And most importantly, I think we were having a discussion. How is PagerDuty going to help the Warriors tonight?
Yes, well, we need to win tonight. So first and foremost, we need everyone here hopefully enter the raffle, and then you come to Chase Center and cheer very, very loudly because we need to win tonight. But thank you for having me. It's great to be here. I oversee technology for the Golden State Warriors in Chase Center. That includes all corporate IT, so network systems, cybersecurity, applications, all your typical corporate IT functions. And I also oversee digital products, so all of our fan-facing technologies as well, web, mobile, point of sale, things of that nature. When it comes to how we use PagerDuty, I think what's really interesting about our brand is that we are we're in the live experiences world, right? Think of Warriors games and concerts and family shows and things like that, but we're enabled by technology. And so there's so much technology behind the scenes that goes into just having an event at Chase Center. Not a Warriors game or a concert, things like that, but just any event at Chase Center. And with as much technology that we have in our environment, we rely on partners like PagerDuty to make sure that it actually works. And then when it doesn't work, we know about it. And now, today, the fact that we are such a global brand as well, it's not just the experience physically here in San Francisco in the Bay Area at Chase Center, but also our digital experience for all of our fans around the world. And so we're really leaning in with PagerDuty on both our internal operations and how we're using this with our internal tech stack, but also for our digital products. So when we have a fan tuning in tonight and using our mobile app in Japan, for example, and if they're having an issue, we need to know about that. And so it's not just our internal infrastructure that we use PagerDuty for, but it's also for our digital products. Because at the end of the day, we're all about experiences. And those experiences happen both physically here in the Bay Area, but increasingly they're digital experiences around the world. And so we're very fortunate to be partners with PagerDuty, and thank you for helping us hopefully get a win tonight.
I'm going to put it out in the universe. We need this win. Let's all do that together. Mind melt. Well, incident management very often is seen as a technical function, right? But like we said, we have a direct impact on business outcomes. So Daniel, how does incident management fit into GSW's broader goals, like driving fan engagement or operating efficiently?
Yeah, I think if you ask our ownership group, what are their three biggest priorities for us as an organization? First and foremost, it's to win. We are a sports team, and winning championships
Let's go win tonight.
Yes. So we got to do that. The second is we have to run a really good business, because in order for us to invest in the players and in the actual experience, we need to be able to drive revenue on and off the court to be able to do that. And thirdly is we need to be good stewards in the community. We are, even though we're a privately owned business, we are very much a community asset. And so for us, success really looks like, how do we win on the court? How do we win off the court and in the community? And for us to be able to do that, we had to go through a bit of a transformation internally. When I joined the Warriors almost 11 years ago, we were just a basketball team in Oakland, and it was very clear what our responsibility was as an organization. Fast forward today in 2025, we own and operate an entire city block here in San Francisco that Chase Center sits on top of, but it includes a 3-acre public space, which we call Thrive City. We have 600,000 square feet of commercial office space, which is a joint venture with Uber. It's their global headquarters. We own those buildings with them. And then over 100,000 square feet of retail space, bars, restaurants, shops, things like that. So our business has expanded quite a bit. And as we've gone through that journey, one of the things we've realized is that we're good at a lot of things, but more importantly, we're also not good at things. And the things that we are good at, we should focus on those things. And on the things that we are not good at, we should partner with people who are the experts and work with them to help us bring that vision to life. And so when it comes to technology holistically, at the end of the day, we're not a tech company. We're a basketball team. And I think our fans, I would say many of you included, want us as an organization to spend our time focusing on how do we build the best products on and off the court, not necessarily building technology or building products. And so we've really leaned in on partners and our technology partners to help us really bring that to life. And so PagerDuty has played a really critical role, and as we've gone through this evolution of being just a basketball team to a sports media entertainment organization, having technology partners to help us do things that really enable us to focus on things that matter the most, which is engaging with our fans, doing great work in the community, and hopefully winning some games.
I love that it's all about your customers.
It's all about the customer.
That's amazing. Mikhail, how are you helping customers make that connection?
Sure. When it comes to incident management, we really look at it. There's 2 different identities that are involved in the incident. The first identity is the stakeholder, right? That's either an external consumer, an internal consumer, and also the person or the engineering resources that are actually remediating the issue. And we really address them as 2 distinct identities. So when it comes to the SRE or engineer resources that are fixing this, what we're trying to do is put all of the relevant data in front of them to basically, the business outcome we're going for is to expedite the resolution, right? So typically an engineer will come in, they'll look at an incident and they'll say, okay, well, what do I need to go investigate? You know, what I need to go and I need more information to fix this. What if they looked into PagerDuty and all of that relevant information was already there? Here's a log of recent changes. Here's, all of the recent code deployments, everything that's relevant. And I'll speak about later how we use AI to do some of those things. So that's one thing that we do. The other thing is focusing on stakeholder communications is, everybody's going to have incidents. It's just part of life. And during those outages, incidents, what customers will remember or people will remember, even is not how you fixed it, not how fast you fixed it, not what the root cause was. What they'll remember is how they were treated because people feel helpless and they're often angry and frustrated. So it's make sure that business outcome that we're going for is, hey, we already messed up by having this incident, but let's not try to lose the customer or destroy the relationship with the customer. So on the SRE side, the business outcome is expedite the resolution time. On the stakeholder side, let's try to make sure that they feel heard, that they get regular updates, that they feel that they don't feel helpless. That's I think the important business outcome.
Yeah, I love that, and I keep going back to this fireside chat we had earlier today, where we were talk about the snake and the snake. I played that snake game, did you? Growing up, and I was like, okay, I really resonate the number of hours, but I think technology gets more complicated, and we are now entering with the rise of all things agentic. It's going to be a game changer for digital operations, and I would love your reactions on what we shared earlier, on all archetypes of operational challenges being well understood, partially understood, and new and novel, and not seen this before. So I loved your reactions on, the thesis we shared in the keynote today and how that resonated with you. And maybe if each of you can share an experience where you have integrated agentic or generative AI into your incident management process or your overall team workflow and what you're learning right now.
Yeah, I think for me, today really resonated for a myriad of reasons. But I think one thing in particular that we think a lot about is when you look at the Golden State Warriors brand, it is a massive global brand. And I talked a little bit about that earlier. But if you actually look a little bit behind the scenes, we're only about 600 full-time employees that work for this organization. So you have, a massive global brand like PagerDuty, and then you have the Warriors logo right next to it, and some people assume it's a company of the same size. But the reality is we're not that big. And so for us, I think the real opportunity with AI, and especially agentic AI, is how do we enable our people to focus on the things that drive the most important outputs and automate a lot of the manual tasks that happen in our organization. And I remember about 2 years ago, when the conversation around AI really started picking up, and a lot of it was, again, more on the generative AI conversation, I just walked up and down the aisles of our offices within Chase Center, and I just kind of looked around and observed how people worked. And it's kind of shocking when you think of just how much manual process happens in our business. And for us in particular, we are striving to have 175 events per year at Chase Center. And I think about groups like guest experience and security and food and beverage who have to support every single one of those events in the building. And when you look at a process that they have that maybe takes 1 hour per game, multiply that by 175 events, that's 175 hours that someone is taking to do a manual process that can be and should be automated. And so I think the thing that really was important for me and really resonated was this idea of driving efficiency and really automating a lot of these manual tasks. And now it's not just going to generative AI to help me create a certain output in terms of a file or an image or things like that. I think there's a lot of work we're doing there that's really exciting, but I'm probably more excited about what we can do from an agentic AI standpoint, where it can actually go and do that first kind of 90% of that heavy lift, and then ultimately still enable us to focus on that 10% to make sure that we're engaging with customers in the most thoughtful, deliberate ways. But if we can take 90% of that equation and convert that into an automated task, that's going to enable us to do so much more. And so I'm really excited about how this applies both from an internal operations standpoint for my team, which is pretty small from the infrastructure that we have to manage, but also from a fan experience standpoint. Because ultimately we do this for our fans. And so if we can spend more time engaging with our fans and creating personalized customer experiences, that's a huge win for us. And that will ultimately help us drive more revenue. Yeah. So it's just such a huge win. So I'm really personally excited about this agentic world that we're coming into. Now, there's obviously challenges and concerns, and especially from a data security standpoint, I think that was one of the top concerns this morning as well. That resonates as well for me. But I think we need to live in a world where we have to experiment, we have to try, we have to push ourselves forward, because we can't just be scared about the risks, because this is too big of a transformational shift for us to sit on the sidelines and wait for other people to figure it out. So I want to be in the front row on the rocket ship, going as high as possible, and ultimately using a lot of these tools to help make our organization better.
I love that. Mikhail, what about you and your team?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that resonated with me a lot was what Dan just mentioned, is the word personalization. I've spent my career sitting on a lot of P1 calls, and incidents are very stressful. So I don't know who wants to go into design software around incident management. It's like more like anger management. But what happens during P1 calls is there are people, because incidents involve everybody, from somebody who is like a senior network engineer who is sitting there in like OSPF routing tables, and it affects somebody who has like no idea what a routing table is. And they all want to know like what's going on, when are we fixing this, what's the root cause, what's the ETA, and things like that. And you're also trying to, your SREs are trying to fix this issue at the same time, and you have people, let's call them stakeholders, right? And they all have different levels of technical competencies, and they all are asking questions that are the same question, but they want it to be answered at a level that they can understand and digest this information. there is not a single IT department. You would have to have like basically a customer service department that's going to be bigger than your IT department to be able to answer those questions. So to be able to personalize, use agentic AI, to be able to personalize the responses to each stakeholder and at the level of their technical competency, I think it's extremely attractive because everybody will feel that that their question has been answered at a sort of a level that they feel that they're comfortable with. So that's one area that I think is basically, I think that there is a lot of potential around stakeholder communications. Personalizing stakeholder communications is something that's very important. Is what I'm observing is very important. The other aspect, as I mentioned, is helping the SREs, okay? So I think, I don't want to jump too much ahead, but I think figuring out what's relevant for the SRE to fix the issue, maybe not even quite going there to automating it just yet, but saying, hey, here is a recent, set of changes that might be relevant to the issue that's going on. Automating that process, because a modern corporation, the velocity of change is very rapid. Like we have customers who maybe shut down and launch tens of thousands of EC2 instances on an hourly basis. So, and same thing with other changes. So being able to sort through this large amounts of data and saying, I think this change might be what's causing, is also a very lucrative area that we are exploring and implementing for many of our customers. So personalization, both for stakeholders and personalization for the SREs, putting relevant data in front of you, I think is a very interesting field.
I love that. I think, again, customer love at the heart of everything you do and meeting people where they are in moments that are not actually easy. And I think something that's been resonating and I've been reflecting on all day today is just like we're all in a phase of experimentation together, right? I think it's like this is all just like a technological shift. It's once in almost a generation, a lifetime maybe even, right? Because even with the iPhone, we didn't see it. And being open to experimentation, trying things out, because this is not a time for like, it feels like to make a decision on how we're going to do something, but just learning rapidly and evolving. I really like that. So maybe I want to shift a little bit into the agentic SRE, right? And who's responsible for that transformation in most organizations. So I'd like to start with you, Mikhail. Like, what work do you see agents fully automating? And where do you think human expertise will remain irreplaceable?
Okay, let me answer that question kind of from the end. Is where I see a lot of large enterprise organizations that have maybe thousands of AWS accounts, Azure, like have large infrastructure. They're afraid of kind of, I would say, autonomous automation, kind of like let AI decide what to do with my infrastructure because they're scared. They're dealing with non-homogeneous infrastructure, right? So if you're Salesforce, you've acquired, 50 other companies in the last, 15 years. So things are quite different. So you have a lot of exceptions and rules and things like that. So I think that there is still there is still a strong oversight that's needed on the SRE side. But like I said, helping the SREs to sift through all their changes and putting relevant data in front of them is a very popular use case. The other one that we're very much working on is using AI technology to prevent promotion of the change that will potentially be disruptive in the first place, because the best incident, the best war is the one that hasn't been fought, right? So that's what we're working on a lot, is basically evaluating the quality of the deployment in a lower non-production environment, looking at things in QA, in staging, and flagging these things before they happen. So that's what we're doing from the SRE perspective. I also mentioned looking up, trying to say, because every time there is an incident, I would say about 75% of the time, something has changed, right? There are changes that are called by extrinsic factors. Maybe your provider who processes credit card payments or some external API that you're using has gone down, and that's what's causing. But it could be intrinsic. And so the idea is, if something changed, how do we know what it was? Was it a firewall rule? Was it a code deployment? Was it a routing change? And so the idea is to, what we do today is to leverage AI to basically try to find what that change was, using timestamps to correlate it, saying right after that is when first signals, the canary in the coal mine has gone off.
Yeah, if only I had $1 for every time a code change broke production. Maybe shifting a little bit to you, Daniel, how do you see agentic AI reshaping the responsibilities of SREs, particularly we talked about this, decision-making in high-stakes conditions, and what new skills you feel might be crucial in this evolving landscape?
Yeah, this also, I think, came up this morning, which is the skill gap conversation. And I think this is something that we probably need to, I think, as an industry, talk a lot more about, is what we need to do to really up-level a lot of the roles and responsibilities within our organizations to actually take advantage of these tools. I'm a big believer in the people process technology framework. And if we're just investing in technology, that doesn't solve actually a lot of the problems. In fact, it probably creates more. Because you're just stacking on top of an existing tech stack and infrastructure that is probably not efficient or perfectly optimized. And so I think we really need to focus on the people side of this. And what skills do we need to, even simple things like how to write a good prompt. I mean, that's been one of the things we've been doing internally, is we've been doing workshops for our employees around how to just even use tools like Gemini. We have Gemini standalone available to every employee in the organization. It's only as good as what the prompt that you put in. And so I think we need to really think about this, again, from a people-centric approach around how are we educating and training our own people to actually utilize these tools to get the most out of them. Because we can just spend money on technology. That's actually maybe the easiest part. Maybe if you don't have a CFO who approves your budget, maybe that's a little bit tougher. But
into our CFO right there. Thank you.
But I think it's really the people and the process part, which is, okay, we have these amazing tools. How are we supposed to use them? But then how does it work within our existing environment? And I think what's been really interesting for me is over the last 11 years, how much our tech stack has changed, but how little our processes have changed within that. So we've added so many more tools into our environment. We've created a lot more complexity because our business has become more complex. But have we spent enough time thinking about the people and the process part? And I think that's something that we need to really keep in mind, is how are we investing in that part of this and not just the technology? The technology actually may be the easiest of those three, but how are we making sure that our people know how to use these tools and get the most value out of them? And that's probably the thing that I think the most about is, yes, agentic AI is going to be incredibly helpful. But that human in the loop is still incredibly important. And maybe just to give an example in our business is that we have a whole team called membership services. And these are people that are dedicated ticket sales representatives for all of our season ticket members. So one of the perks of when you become a season ticket member of the Golden State Warriors or the Golden State Valkyries is you have a person who is there for you whenever you need anything. And I often think about, well, yeah, we can probably automate a lot of what they do because they get a ton of repetitive questions and things like that. But you also don't want to lose the human touch.
The personalization.
The personalization. And I think trying to find that balance between how do we automate, but then also how do we keep that human touch, that white glove service that we've been known for as an organization. The reason we renew our season tickets at such a high percentage and why we score so highly on a lot of our, whether it's net promoter score surveying, customer satisfaction, even league-wide surveys, is because we've taken such a thoughtful approach to that human interaction. Yeah. And so I just want to make sure we as an industry continue to really remember the human part of this, because it's so important to what we do. The technology will continue to evolve and continue to get better over time, especially in this agentic world. But how do we keep that human approach?
I love that, and my team and I have been talking a lot about like what this moment means for AI adoption, and I think something you said really resonated with me. It's like enablement.
Yeah.
Like giving people that skill gap and those right tools, like training them and coaching them, giving them avenues. Like, we have like an amazing Udemy account where our teams can go learn, and I think the other thing is evangelizing, right? Like talking about the benefits of technology, and then making sure the team has an understanding of your why, but there's some things that are just irreplaceable. That's human touch.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I love that you said, we talk a lot about internally with my team is the why versus the how. I think we often just default to, if there's a problem, you go immediately into how am I going to fix it, and you go into kind of root cause analysis mode. And often you have to kind of take a step back and say, why is this a problem in the first place? Or is this even a problem that we should be addressing? And it's, I think, really hard to get out of that mental headspace sometimes. But Simon Sinek is one of my favorite authors, and he talks a lot about this idea of the why. And maybe we don't need to jump into solution mode immediately. Maybe take a step back. Well, if you're in the middle of an incident, yes, please go into resolution mode immediately. But maybe after that, we talk internally a lot about we need to be better about debriefs and postmortems, and asking those questions around why did we even get into this position in the first place. And so that why versus how conversation, I think, is also incredibly important to have.
Always be learning.
Yes.
Awesome. So to both of you, I think, Mikhail, we can start with you. How do you see agentic AI evolving incident management over the next 5 to 10 years? And what significant operational roles might transform as a result?
I think Dan mentioned the word that I was going to use is kind of one of the evolutions is that agentic AI passes like Turing test, in almost every single interaction where you do feel like you are getting a white glove service and it's highly personalized. I think that's one definite there'll certainly be other directions in which we're going to develop, but if you feel like you've been taken care of in a very personalized manner, I think that's an area where 100% we're going to be striving and achieving success. The other areas that I see is, as I mentioned today, a lot of where our AI efforts on the SRE side today are focused on contextualizing the incident, providing relevant data. But I think as time goes on, the trust will increase, and we're going to be shifting more and more towards the auto-remediation and automating resolution of the issue. So kind of these are the two directions on which I'm willing to bet money is a high degree of personalization and a certain degree of automating the resolution.
What about you, Daniel? Does it resonate?
Yes, it does. I think about this through the lens, really technology more broadly, through this lens of art and science. Where you have art on one end, which is a lot of kind of I've done this way for so many years, and that's kind of how I do it, or I have this gut feeling or intuition. And on the science side is being entirely data-driven. And I think in a lot of industries, we're either too much on one side or too much on the other. I think what we need to get to is find that middle ground and that balance where you have humans and technology working together to solve problems. And right now, I would say we probably lean a little too much on the art and maybe not enough on science. And part of that is, I think, the rise of AI and agentic AI is going to help us get there. And I think, I was at an event, we hosted the NBA All-Star Game in February, and the NBA does an annual tech summit. And one of the speakers was Jensen Huang, the co-founder and CEO of NVIDIA. And he said something that was incredibly profound, which is that people who use AI are going to outcompete people who do not use AI. And I think that's just, to me, that's that art and science coming together, where you need the art and that human intuition and that touch, but you need it, that science and that data and technology to help make that person better. And so I think we are trying to find that middle ground, and how do we get to this world of art and science, technology and humanity working together to solve some of these critical opportunities, because the reality is a lot of the infrastructure that we have is critical infrastructure.
Yep.
Everything inside of Chase Center runs on our network. From obviously the most visible things like our scoreboard and IPTV and LEDs to things like our ticket scanners and point of sale systems and the actual underlying network. And so we need to make sure that those two worlds live together, because I can't expect an agent to just fix a network outage. Yep. that requires that human touch and knowledge and gut and things like that. But how can those two worlds work together when there is an issue? Maybe we don't have to spend 20 or 30 minutes trying to find that needle in the haystack. Maybe that haystack has become a lot smaller and that needle becomes a lot bigger.
I really like that. So we're almost at time, and I'm curious, like, what's the most, if you were to leave one piece of advice for our audience today, what would you offer to organizations preparing for this era that we're in of agentic AI and autonomous operations?
I'll be quick. Don't be scared and try. There is a new world out there, and as I said earlier, you want to be on the rocket ship and not be left behind. So even if it's really small pilots, I mean, just experiment, try. You don't have to do anything necessarily in production. You can do things in a much more sandbox environment, but we all have a responsibility, I think, to actually utilize this technology, because we're going to be left on the sidelines if we don't.
I love that. What about you, Mikhail?
Absolutely, I agree with Dan. Shift left, put the tool in the power of people. Some will misuse it because they lack skills. Well, you can compensate for that, but some will experiment and will achieve great things. So don't be afraid to experiment. But I'm going to say something that's a little trite, is you need to have good data. Feed good data into your tools, because without good data, so whatever events you're sending to PagerDuty, they need to have lots and lots of context for you to be able to take advantage of all the agentic capabilities. So basically, don't feed bad data to your tools. Don't eat yellow snow.
Never eat yellow snow. I love that. So don't be afraid and think about your customers and go win. Let's go win tonight.
Go Warriors.
Go Warriors. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.